Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have a really exciting review to get through because this is the brand new Tyrannosaurus Rex, the extreme damage version from Mattel for the Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous line. I actually had a heck of a time trying to find this figure. I saw so many other people were finding it in their areas, and of course my area is absolutely littered with scalpers. Like, it is so hard to get anything new here because the scalpers show up at the store the moment they open, and they just kind of lurk and take stuff all the time from everyone. If you are interested in Pokemon cards, non-existent in my area. Jurassic World, pretty much non-existent in my area, especially when it comes to new stuff. And that's just the beginning of it. NECA figures nearly impossible to find because my area is completely littered with disgusting scalpers, and on top of being pretty much the lowest form of scum on the planet, they consistently take away the reviews here for the channel, or at least delay them for quite a while. But unfortunately for them, I was able to snag an extreme damage Tyrannosaurus Rex today at Walmart, and I could not be happier to finally have this, again, after probably about a month of searching, if not more, for the figure. But as far as the box art goes, it's pretty much your standard Camp Cretaceous box art, the usual box art that we get. And then if we, actually, as we turn it around, you can see a really cool image of Rexy right here on the side. But then as we turn it around and take a look at the back, we have another really nice image of the Tyrannosaurus right here, showing the articulation of the mouth as well as the very cool extreme damage feature of the Tyrannosaurus. Again, I was really happy to get a hold of this one because it's basically like a revamped version of the Extreme Chompin' Rex, and I am a huge fan of the Extreme Chompin' Rex from Mattel. So anytime they release another version of that, I'm usually pretty excited about picking it up, and this one, again, being one of the kind of like a revamped version of that figure, I was really psyched about it. But let's go ahead, break this out of the box, and just go straight to the closer look right now. So as far as the sculpt itself, it seems as though it's pretty much the same Extreme Chompin' Rex that we've had previously, except for, of course, you can see some, battle damage that has occurred, which we will get to as the review goes on. I don't think I see anything that's really different. It actually maybe appears as though it's slightly more, almost like a little more muscular looking in the back, but I may not be remembering the original one all that well, although I have taken a look at it quite a few times already. It's been quite some time since we did have that Rex. So we're just basically going to go over what is new, and that would be the action feature and the paint application to the figure. But as we look up here at the head sculpt is primarily this really nice version of a brown, and then you have a darker brown, which borders around the eye, a very nice, very dark brown, like a burnt umber type of a brown, which I think looks great on the figure. And then you can see that darker brown run up here into the palate area, so it gives a little bit of coloration to the face. There's not too much else going on up here in the face, but we can actually see there's like these light speckles, so it's kind of like what we usually see from Mattel. We usually see darker speckles, but on this one we have a little bit of like a lighter speckling, almost like a khaki type of a color. And then of course we have the alternate coloration here for the lower jaw, which you can see does run down the course of the body right here until we get to the underside. It tapers off right here, and then we of course have nothing out here on the tail. But one thing that I've seen a few people mention in different posts and stuff of people that receive the figure is that the jaw is articulated, and it's not something like you have to have an action feature or anything to open it. Like, you can just straight up articulate the jaw and leave it that way. That is really awesome to me. I'm so happy about that because that's just something that I really love. I love the ability to kind of pose and display your Rex exactly how you would like as far as like positioning goes, and having an articulated jaw like this where it doesn't just have to open with like an action feature or anything really opens a lot of possibility, a lot of doors as far as posing your figure, and that's something that we haven't had really much of previously, especially when it comes to the Extreme Chompin' Rex. So I'm really psyched that we can do that with this one, and it all works really smoothly. You actually have articulation on the lower jaw as well as the upper jaw, so you can open that really wide if you would like, and it stays perfectly and articulates really smoothly. But as far as the mouth goes, you can see the teeth are painted pretty nicely. There's maybe like a really slight amount of sloppiness to the lower jaw, but actually it's just barely if at all. So the teeth look really quite nice as far as the paintwork goes. You can also see a really nice gloss coat here for the inside of the mouth, as well as a really nice realistic coloration. Pretty much that same color that we've seen on the T-Rex every single time Mattel has released one. And you can see that coloration is pretty much everywhere on the inside of the mouth and looks great. We also have that gloss coat everywhere as well, and you can see the tongue is really nicely textured. Like, that is a beautiful sculpt on that tongue. I'm trying to get it in a way that we can see it without it being crooked, but it's kind of a long figure, but you can definitely see that that tongue looks great in both sculpt and paint and gloss coat, actually. The eyes are painted with a yellow, and they are really nicely placed. There is no sloppiness to that at all. Now, I will say, when I found this Rex, there was actually this one and one other one left in store, and the other one did have some sloppy paint in the eyes, so I grabbed the one that had better paint application. So it's not something that we can definitely say Mattel has corrected as far as this figure goes, because I definitely did see one that did have some sloppiness. Unfortunately, there is no other paint application up here on the face, so as we move back here into the neck, you can see that the nice brownish coloration continues throughout the entire body, and we have this darker brown that kind of designs all over the place, and I really like that. I think it looks super, super nice and very natural on the figure, and it's definitely something that I feel like is pretty reminiscent of a Jurassic Park style Rex, of Rexy herself. You know, not perfect, but definitely fairly close. The entire coloration of the figure, I feel like, is really quite similar to a version of a Jurassic Park style Tyrannosaurus Rex. The only downside as far as the paintwork goes, from here up I feel like it looks great, but then the darker brown that's up here on the back transitions and changes to the primary body color again, and you don't see any paintwork out here on the tail at all, not past the hip area. Up here in the back just kind of disappears, and that is definitely a downside. Imagine how much nicer this would have looked if we actually had the paint that ran all the way out onto the tail. Like, it would have looked phenomenal if you ask me. Of course, there are no painted nails on the fingers. We do, however, have painted nails on the feet, which have a nice gloss coat as well, and they shine very realistically like they should, but unfortunately no dew claw is present as far as the paintwork goes. Maybe one of these days Mattel will actually watch one of my reviews and take note to that fact and, you know, maybe improve that in the future, but I'm probably thinking that's not going to happen. However, I will keep my fingers crossed. And then we have the action feature, which I would normally wait till it's back down on the table to do the action feature. I'm actually going to do it up here so we can take a closer look at it. So you do have a button up here that you're going to press, and then it changes the inside here to now having a wound, and you can see that it's very nicely painted with a reddish coloration, obviously insinuating that bloody look. We also have a gloss coat present in there, so it also looks, you know, pretty bloody, I guess. And then you also have some pretty nice actual sculpting going on in there, and I feel like that's a really cool action feature, something I've never really seen prior to this. It's similar kind of to the battle damage Spinosaurus, although that one had quite a bit more of like an elaborate battle damage sort of a deal going on, but it's kind of similar to that, and it actually has the battle damage on both sides, which I think was a really cool touch. I love the fact that they added that in on both sides, so you can have, you know, quite a bit of battle damage going on with your Rex, and you can see that both sides are different as far as the wounds go. You can definitely see that both sides have their own unique injury, which I really quite like as well. But as far as this figure goes, honestly, it is fantastic, and I'm so happy to have a new version of the Extreme Chompin' Rex out now with an articulated jaw that I can pose and position however I would like without kind of shoving something into the action feature to keep the mouth open. And again, it's so awesome that we have this type of articulation in the neck. It's so smooth, and that jaw, and now this really cool battle damage feature, as well as the really nice paint application. This figure is definitely a really nice release from Mattel. As far as the rest of the articulation goes, of course, it did state that we have the articulation in the neck, which it can go completely out of frame right there. But you can see it's really nice, smooth articulation. You have two different areas right here, which can make the Rex pretty much articulate however you would like. And it's a really smooth articulation, similar to what we have seen on some of the Proceratosaurus figures and the Velociraptor figures from Mattel. I love that articulation. And then, of course, we have the articulated jaw, which we already have pointed out numerous times in this review. You have articulation in the arms, which works really quite nicely, and then articulation in the legs, which is definitely stiff because I haven't used it yet. And then we also have the swivel down here in the ankle area, and you can move the legs out away from the body if you would like. And actually, now that I'm down here, there is the Jurassic Facts app code if you would like to add this to your collection. I did not show that off when we were up there before, which I totally forgot about. And then we have articulation in the tail, which can move, left, right, up, down, pretty much any way, including swiveling. So there's lots and lots of articulation to be found on the Extreme Chompin' T-Rex. As far as a size goes, for a length, even though it's upside down currently, it is, if I bring it into screen here, you can see it a little better. It's about 19¼ inches, or about the 49 centimeter area. And then for a height, the highest point would be the head. And again, this all depends on how you position your Rex. And although it's probably a little bit impossible for you to see from that vantage point you're in, it's just like a hair over 7 inches, or about the 18 centimeter range. For a size comparison, here are our usual review suspects as far as size comparisons go, with Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to our newest extreme damage Tyrannosaurus Rex. And you can definitely see, again, size-wise how they stack up, but if you already have an Extreme Chompin' Rex prior, you definitely obviously know the size because it's exactly the same sculpt with some new additions as far as like the battle damage and stuff like that, but the sculpt is still the same size as all the previous Extreme Chompin' Rex figures. So this Extreme Damage Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous Tyrannosaurus Rex from Mattel is a really fun figure. No matter how many times Mattel releases a new T-Rex, I always get excited about it. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just a sucker for T-Rex, but every single time I'm so happy to pick up another Tyrannosaurus from the Mattel line, and this is a really nice one. I absolutely love the paint application of this one. Definitely one of my favorite paint schemes that I've seen on the Mattel Tyrannosaurs, and it impresses me how many times they've released a Rex like this, an Extreme Chompin' Rex with, different paint schemes, but they always continue to release them with really nice and natural paint schemes. Like, they do a great job as far as the actual paint schemes of their figures, and most times I feel like they usually look quite realistic and quite natural, and that's definitely what I get here from this Rex right here. But the only downside to the paint is the fact that it ends right around the hip region, and then there's no alternate paint out onto the tail. That's definitely a downside, a bummer if you ask me, because if they would have continued that darker brown the entire way out the tail, which really isn't all that far, it would have just made a world of difference as far as the overall beauty of the figure in the paint scheme. And unfortunately, the lack of paint for the rear of the Rex, the second half, definitely takes away from the overall beauty of the figure. It would have really looked a lot nicer with that darker coloration had it run the whole way out onto the tail. And of course, if we had fingernail paint, but that's just, not something I think we can ask for at this point. But other than that, the paintwork looks great, really nice and naturally applied overall. The sculpt is fantastic. I've always loved the sculpt of the Extreme Chompin' Rex. Again, like I stated before, it's probably my favorite of the Mattel Tyrannosaurs as far as the sculpt goes. I just feel like it's like that perfect size and just has that awesome neck articulation. I've always been a huge fan of the neck articulation of this figure. The only downside that you can consistently say to the Mattel Tyrannosaurs is, in my opinion, the oversized feet, and then the tail isn't quite as long as it should be, but at this point we're probably used to that. It doesn't hurt to mention it in hopes that maybe it'll change in the future, but, it's just the way it is as far as the Mattel line goes. I still think that the sculpt is phenomenal, and I love how accurate each and every release from Mattel usually is as far as, screen accuracy goes. They really do match them up beautifully to what we see on screen in the Jurassic films. And then we have the really cool action feature, which I love. I absolutely think that the action feature of this Rex is great. It's another very cool, unique kind of a battle damage type of a look for the figure. Mattel continues to impress me with how they come up with new ways to give us a battle damage dinosaur, and this is yet another new, fresh idea on the part of Mattel that I really quite like, and I think it operates really smoothly, overall looks beautiful on the figure, and was a pretty cool and unique idea, again, compared to what we've seen in the past. I definitely dig the battle damage feature of this extreme damage, whatever you'd like to call it. So as a whole, the figure is fantastic. I love it. I love every single time I get a new Mattel Rex, and this one is definitely one of my favorites overall, I would say. The only thing is that paint really should have run out onto the tail, but aside from that, it's fantastic. So if you are interested, check your local Walmart. Hopefully you'll have one there. They seem to be pretty well stocked in most stores, just not usually in my area. So you shouldn't have too big of a problem getting a hold of one. And also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.